It's been a while since I've been here. I have a reputation for terrorizing people. I spent a lot of time in the dean's office when I was in high school. So I'd first of all like to thank Mary and Dean for giving us such an opportunity to share space, to learn things. And so I'd like to welcome you all to the annual Pyramid Anonymous meeting. My name's Doug, and I've been recovering from pyramiditis. And then you say, hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug.
So, it all started with a piece of paper. I was living out in Montana back in 1975, and I'd always been interested in pyramids. My grandmother said I was the easiest grandkid to babysit because she'd just give me a National Geographic with a picture of Egypt and I'd be gone for the rest of the day. So in 1975, there was a gentleman in Billings, Montana, Dr. DJ Nelson, who was doing pyramid classes. And my wife at the time said, you got to go up and see this guy because he's showing how pyramids can make you strong or weak. Really? At the time, I was about a 245-pound weightlifter. I said, so we'll see how this works. So I went up to the college on a Tuesday night, took a friend of mine with me, and sure enough, DJ Nelson stood up in the front of the room. He looked at all of us and he said, this is the angle that the Great Pyramid is based on. And I want to have a volunteer come up, and I'm going to demonstrate to you how this works. Well, some lady started to stand up. I pushed her out of the way, and I was the first one down there. And I'd never had a muscle test, so he says, put your arm out, and he could almost do a pull-up on my arm. It isn't moving at all. So then he took this paper angle. He says, put your other hand out. He placed it in my hand in this direction. My arm was strong. I thought, got him. Then he flipped the angle. He shifted the polarity. 40 to 60% loss of muscle mass, or strength. And I thought, what the blank? I says, let's do that again. So who would like to volunteer? Who would like to? All right, come on up, young man. I like that attitude.
Kind of a Doug attitude.
And so at the time I had an advertising agency and I thought I knew everything about paper there was to know. Okay. So just face me like this. Can you hear me if I do you mind stand a little closer? Okay. Which arm can I test? Okay.
All right.
All right. So you stay above the wrist and you apply about a 8 to 10 pound pressure. Good and strong. Okay. Then we take and I place this angle in this hand here. We test the same, then we flip the angle around. Feel the difference? Try it again. Real strong. If I flip it, feel the difference?
Yeah.
So this has, stay with me, so this is a 76-degree angle. If you took the pyramid and cut it directly in half, you would have the interior or meridian angle is 76 degrees. So it has a dynamic effect on the human energy field. So let's go a little deeper. This resonates with the heart, governing, and central meridian in the body. The exact harmonic frequency. So come over here again. Let's test this hand. Now, the ting point for the heart meridian is on the inside of the small finger. If I place this right triangle at that point, okay, we're right on the wavelength. If I reverse it, feel the difference? Same thing, it resonates with the governing meridian, terminates here, central meridian. So if I place this right at the, a lot of difference. If I reverse it, thank you. So this has polarity. This has polarity. Give him a hand. That was a brave thing to do. So this pyramid then really interrupted my life. I'd always been obsessing over pyramids. I knew I was suffering from pyramiditis. I probably caught that back in the 70s, about the same time Mary and Dean got their pyramiditis. So suddenly people all over the country back in the 70s were starting to obsess about pyramids. So I studied with DJ Nelson for 4 years, and finally we had to go to Egypt. So I took my first trip to Egypt in 1979, and I thought, well, let's promote this trip and get some other people to come along, then I get the free trip. So took a group of people to Egypt, and that was the first World Annual Healing Symposium. I thought that was a big title. We did it on the internet now, so you get back then, so you could get away with a title like that. So, but it was a law of attraction, because we were advertising a tour for the first annual World Healing Symposium. The law of attraction kicked in, and we started collecting people from all over the planet who had an interest in healing the globe. So that was a fun event. The second year, 1980, I sent brochures out all over, and Dean Hardy got a brochure. I'm the cause of this. So Dean came to Egypt in March of 1980. We had 80 people on the tour. We had a lot of experts on pyramid energy. Dr. Pat Flanagan was with us. So bottom line, in doing this work for 40 years, Dean Hardy is the only person that ever gave me the double Masonic handshake. And we knew right away the first time we met that this is a Masonic thing. And it's all reacquisition of information that we had been working with before in other lifetimes. We recognized that. So there was an instant connection with Dean. The following year, the third World Annual Healing Symposium, we had 225 people, 5 busloads. You talk about a metaphysical event. Yeah, and so Dottie Vorbeck, Vicki, we had a number of people that were with us on that tour. So in that tour we had 25 guest speakers, 200 passengers, and mayhem occurred. I had a standing order that you needed to be back at the buses. There was a 15-minute grace period. If you didn't get to the bus by that time, then you'd be left. So we all went to Sakkara one morning. We dispersed 225 people throughout the complex. We had speakers positioned at different places, and so it was quite an afternoon. So I was out in the northern courtyard of Sakkara, where they celebrate the Heb Sed Festival. It's the oldest celebration celebrated by human beings on the planet. History goes all the way back into Western Africa, and the Heb Sed Festival is observing the rotation of Sirius B around Sirius A. And how did they know that? Because Sirius B is invisible. Who told the ancients that Sirius B completes a rotation every 50 years? And where'd the Dogon get that? Exactly, exactly. And so for years I resisted the idea that we might have received some consciousness or some assistance from, and that sealed the deal. I've come to the conclusion that many Egyptologists have confirmed that Egypt, in its heyday, basically inherited a complete doctrine of information. It needed no additions. It was a complete doctrine. Where did that complete doctrine come from? For years I had many spirited conversations with Mary, because she was a little ahead of me on this time, and she knew it was coming up from there, and I just kept resisting. But then about 15 years ago, found confirmation that all the information that you would find in Egypt today was inherited from Sirius. Question? Okay. So from that point on, 12 of us wound up in the northern courtyard, and one of the women on the tour had been channeling the ancient Egyptian dialect about 2 weeks before she went to Egypt. It was driving her nuts. Well, also in this group of 12 Rick Danielson, an Egyptologist, was able to translate the ancient language. So I was standing on top of this mound of dirt with Dr. Joe Jockmans. Remember Dr. Jockmans? Jalandris? And he and I were doing muscle testing on this mound of dirt because I said, this isn't from the earth. So Joe and I are up there testing this dirt, and we're getting it's from Mars. And then about that time, we're called to form a circle of 12 because Jerry Marie is now going into total state. So we kick off our shoes, we gather in a circle, and she starts in. Powerful message. The first thing she said is, the earth is sick, the earth is sick, the earth is sick, the earth will vomit, the earth will vomit. Classical Egyptian repetition. And so she went on for close to an hour and a half. And as 12 of us, we realized that we were being contacted by the archetype, the 12 archetypes that govern Sakkara. And we were told to basically understand that some huge earth changes are coming toward us. And it's based on the Hebsed count. So the next Hebsed festival, the last one was in 1980, and that's interesting because in 1980, Dean and I didn't know that that was a Hebsed festival event. So I feel that Dean's a messenger. Dean was born in 1930. That was a Hebsed festival event that was celebrated by the Masonic Lodge for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they celebrate it on the summer solstice every year, and then every 50 years they have the Jubilee count, and that's marking the rotation of Sirius B around Sirius A. So Dean's a messenger. He was born on a Hebsed event. 50 years later, he goes to Egypt for the first time on a Hebsed festival. We didn't know that. I didn't know that. My partner at the time absolutely insisted that he and I be in Egypt during the summer solstice of 1980. And during that time, we arranged to promote 3 more trips to Egypt, the fall and then the following spring. So the Hebsed was in the background. It was like Dean and I were being used as pawns to basically collect and deliver a message. Then the following year, Mary and John was 16 when he came to Egypt the first time. And so that's what gave everybody the pyramiditis. We just were all obsessed with it. So then Mary and Dean invited me to do a presentation here in 1981. I was busy out in Montana. So 1982 was the first time I came out here and did the presentation. And it's been such a rich experience. A little congested here. It's nothing emotional, it's just the allergies. So that's kind of what occurred with how we set up this whole program. It just was divine ordinance. It was using us as the vehicles to bring together people with like minds. So here we are. So what's the lesson? Well, getting back to this angle, wherever it went.
You said it behind you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So getting back to this angle, 40 years of research has basically confirmed that the Egyptians had a right triangle that resonates harmonically with every meridian in the body. Because these 15 right triangles are considered your 15 archetypal angles. They are at the head or the generative line of all things on the planet. So years ago, as I began to learn meridians, I thought, we've always been told that man is the microcosm. Everything in the universe is within man. So I thought, well, there's got to be a flaw to that. So I started muscle testing everything I could find. I'd take a blade of grass and find out which meridian it resonated with. I'd pick up an ant, and we'd test ant. Ants resonate with a spleen meridian because they do spleen things.
God.
Explain it to me.
Explain it to you. So that was kind of like the journey we started on. We test colors. I'd go into a clothing store and we'd test sock colors on the salesman. You'd be strong with one color, weak with another color. I started working with a couple sports teams. Well, one sport team stopped using navy blue jerseys in artificial sunlight because it just blows your energy field. So that began the journey of working with these paper angles. The Egyptians had a geometry problem they call cosmic harp. And the cosmic harp is a semicircle, and they would divide the base of the cosmic harp in half, and then they would divide the cosmic harp using the Fibonacci ratio, and in doing so they would produce 15 right triangles. And these 15 right triangles represent the overtones and undertones on the musical scale. That's how tight that scale is. Anything past those 15 angles is a harmonic. So from that, we began to use the right triangles as healing mechanisms. So the integers of these triangles are, the smallest triangle is 3159 degrees. That resonates with your triple Wormer meridian. The biggest angle is 4545, and the 45 degree angle resonates with your liver meridian, because the liver's job is to keep and maintain balance. That's why it gets the angle with balanced angles. So what we've learned is the Egyptians emphatically stated that if you repeat a word 4 times, you create the molecular resonance in the fluids, the water in your body, or in the glass of water you're holding. 4 times. Don't say it once, don't say it twice, 4 times in quantum physics, and you've completely programmed the electron molecule, the element that rotates around the radius, around the nucleus. And so this process allows us to, through a meditation, if I want to communicate with the liver, I just simply 4 times go 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45, 45. If I'm holding a glass of water, the water molecule now has the vibrational rate of a 45 degree angle, liver energy. I do part-time consultation with patients. I opened one of the first integrated medical centers in Michigan back in 1986 because I learned how to use the German diagnostic equipment called EDS, electrodermal screening. That's where you're using a simple nerve current of 0.6 to 0.12 microamps to measure resistance at the acupuncture points located in the hands and the feet. So the nerve current tells us where there's pain. When you start metering the nerve current, you can identify exactly where the imbalance is in the body. Once you get baseline readings, then you can use homeopathic remedies, nutritional supplements to see what the body likes. Because if the body likes it, there's no resistance on the meter. It's just like shopping. If you see something you like, there's no resistance. If you pick out the wrong homeopathic remedy, there's a resistance. So I work with a group in Austria. They can't import Hannah Kroger's vibropathic remedies for parasites in Austria. So the first woman I worked over, she had stage 3 cancer, and I said, "Do you believe in affirmations, and are you metaphysical?" She says, "Yes, I am." I said, "Well then, 3 times a day, I want you to say threadworm 6x to a glass of water and drink it." So she did that, and usually in 75 to 90 days of doing that protocol, you will get your immune system to eliminate that parasite. So sure enough, within 75 days, retested her hair sample remotely, and she'd cleared the parasite. So that's the power of the word. The Egyptians understood that temple space was based upon the conscious manipulation of the word, because that's all we have. You think about your life. You've created your life by first thinking about it, then you speak it, and then you do it. I'm thinking about a red Corvette. I'm going to tell my friends I'm getting a red Corvette, and then by gosh, I sign the lease. Thought, word, and gesture. So I've always considered my clients to be my teachers, because I hold no medical degrees. I didn't have time to go to medical school. I was having too much fun going to Egypt. So manifesting consciousness through the conscious application of thought, word, and gesture is the total teaching that Egypt left behind. all their temple space is basically, they viewed the temple as a place for the priest to enunciate the power words that would bring balance to the community, to the people in the community, and to the planet itself. So on our tour in 1981, I had people from all over the country, Europe, bring samples of water from either a lake or a river or a pond near their house. And so we mixed the water up and did a ceremony and then blessed the water and then introduced it to the Nile. So that was kind of our intention, is to start to get a small number of people, 225 people, to start thinking about managing the word, managing their thought, words, and gestures. And so it's been amazing to watch how this works. So now, fast forward, back when we were going to Egypt, there was no 4G, 3G, or none of that stuff going on. So recently we've got more 5G energy going on, and people are obsessing over it. A lot of people think that the 5G introduction might have caused some of the COVID reactions. I affirm that. I've seen that happen. And so a lot of us, when we're exposed to a new electromagnetic frequency, if there's something out of balance in your body, you may not be able to handle that introduction of that frequency. So I need to have a person who has an active cell phone and would like to do a couple demonstrations for me. How about you? Went to Egypt last November. Had a great time. It was safe. All right. So let's see. I think we can set your phone over here. And I promised that I was going to share with you the secret number hidden in the Great Pyramid that basically connects human consciousness to global consciousness to cosmic consciousness. So let's do a muscle test here. Put your arm out. Do this. Okay. And then put your hand over the phone.
Mine.
There you go. Just there, resist. Boom. 40 to 60% less strength when that phone's on. So I sell these sticky notes and a pen. So I want you to write the number 38-52. That's the angles of the right triangle that determines the dimensions of the Great Pyramid. Gnat just flew in my eye. Okay, so 38-52. Put your hand out again, and put your hand over the phone. Resist. Okay, still. So now, if I put the sticky note over the phone, put your hand over the phone. Just canceled out the vibration. Now, what did that do? Well, first of all, your phones are basically creating an imbalance in the energy field that we're standing in. So the 3852 number basically balances out the environment around that phone. Okay. Take it away. There it is. So I got to thinking last summer, about a mile from our house, up on top of one of the big microwave towers with all the fans on it and stuff, I noticed a bird nest, a great big bird nest. And I go, what the hell's going on? So I kept watching the bird nest, and pretty soon I saw who owned the nest. Two great big ospreys had built a nest on top of the microwave. And I thought, well, why isn't the microwave, and they also had two chicks. They raised two chicks in that nest all summer long. I thought, why isn't the microwave messing with them? So here's the secret. You've heard of the Fibonacci or Fibonacci ratio? It's the golden section in mathematics. Comprehensive studies of that tell us that everything on the planet is based on the proportions of the phi ratio. All plants, every bone in your body, everything, minerals, rocks. And one of the best examples of the Fibonacci ratio is the bird feather, because each one of these little feathers is slightly smaller than the next to a specific ratio. So I got to thinking, why were those birds able to raise two chicks on top of a microwave tower? Well, Birds use feathers to navigate. The feather neutralizes and balances the environment they're flying in so that they can stay true to their navigation. So, neutralizes 5G.
Wow.
So you can either carry a little 3852, or some people write this on their phone, or they put it in their phone, or you can carry a feather around, and I've got some people that are duct taping a small bird to their phone. No, don't share that, because that's going to be on the internet soon. Thank you.
Can I tell a feather story?
Sure.
On my other house, I had this desk.
Microphone. Use the microphone, please.
Yeah, you're not facing the phone and you
Sorry.
can't hear you. When you
I had a desk in my healing room. Okay, there was a desk, and on top of the oak desk was my feather, which stood up. It was an eagle feather, and it stood up in that room all the time. Okay, so anyways, a fire started, and there was the black from the fire and everything happened, but nothing that it should have. My house should have just kind of gone up, but that feather was there, and nothing was scorched in and around that feather, and the curtains didn't go up in flames, and they should have. So that explains it. I just thought I got an extra miracle.
So while I have you here, could I do a couple experiments on you?
Sure. Do I have a choice?
So,
yeah, the
Do we
last
saw her
time
in
they
half
levitate.
this time?
yeah, we'll do that later.
You promise?
Well, there's an interesting story about the secret number. Back when Khufu was basically finishing the pyramid, he heard that there was a famous master who knew the secret number. And Khufu said, I want that secret number because I want to put it in the pyramid. So he had his servants go out and find the name of the man named Derdoff. So he summons Derdoff to the court and he says, I heard you know the secret number. Well, Derdoff's pretty smart and he knows he doesn't want to tell the pharaoh the secret number, because so he says, well, I don't know the secret number, but I know of it. And then the pharaoh says, well, I also know that you're the guy that can remove the head of a duck and put it back on, or any beast. And he says, that's true, sire. So then the pharaoh gets excited. He says, well, bring in one of the slaves and let's chop his head off. And Derdoff says, oh no, we can't do things like that to the noble herd. That's what they used to refer to the noble herd. So back in the 70s, people were just learning about polarity. And the muscle testing response things that I'm doing, like, were just a mystery to everybody. So give me a straight arm test. Okay, resist. Chicken bone with polarity. Put your hand out. The palm, just put the palm out. If I lay it there, resist. It's like a magnet. I didn't match the polarity. Boom. So that just matched her electrical polarity. If I flip her polarity, now strong and weak.
Oh,
So,
God.
thank you. So this is, yeah.
Tell us what you did. We can't see it.
Flip her polarity?
Well, I just thrust it into the energy field, right at an acupuncture point.
What does the flipping the bone do, though?
Well, it has polarity, and you have polarity.
Yeah.
So you have a plus-minus polarity.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
has a plus-minus. If I do it minus-plus, then you're strong. If I match the poles like a magnet, you'll be weak. Tricky, huh?
Yep.
So, one more test. How many people know what this is?
Oh, I do.
Yeah, the women know what it is. Years ago, none of the guys in the audience go, all right. What's an underwire?
Oh, for this?
Oh, see? They got it.
Good
So
demonstration.
you just won an underwire. So again,
Vanna.
here's a demonstration on electrical polarity. Things that have a semicircle have a polarity, plus minus. So hand out, resist, put your hand out. If I lay it in the hand this way, it's, oh, got you first time. If I flip the polarity, and she's strong. So already back in the 70s, they were doing studies on how the underwire bra would conflict with the lymph glands.
Right.
And so for half the month you're okay. For the next half of the month you're. So after seeing this test, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So after seeing this test, I thought, oh my God, my wife at the time, she wears these. So I ran home. Now, I wasn't too swift at the time. I could have tested the bra with the underwire in the bra. Oh yeah, my wife's having to sit there watching me tear the underwire out of her $75 bra. And then she wouldn't even muscle test. Then in studying the double helix, our body is surrounded by a double helix. That's the form of the energy field around us. One helix spins to the left, one helix spins to the right. And every 11 and a half days, your thalamus will flip that rotation, so you constantly get a balanced rotation. So here's our hexagon, here's our pentagon. So who would like to volunteer for this? I'm going to pick you. All right, there you are. Brave people.
Stick to the hexagon.
How are you?
Nan.
Nan. All right. All right. Well, let's do a little muscle test. All right. Resist. So then, if I take this hexagon and help me remember which direction this goes, because I'll forget. If I take this hexagon and rotate, this would be clockwise. Okay. Resist. Strong. If I go counterclockwise. So right now she has her hexagon helix is going counterclockwise. Here's the pentagon. If I go counterclockwise, if I go clockwise, thank you. Thank you. So the hexagon and the pentagon then are the two geometric shapes that govern the balance of your DNA helix you're standing in. Same principle. It's the same rotational rate as your DNA in your cells. So there's a connection. If you keep your energy field balanced, then all the cells in your body are going to have a better chance of keeping their DNA structures balanced. Okay? And so the Egyptians understood that the pentagon comes from heaven and the hexagon comes from the earth. And the two then are bound up. They called it the fettering of two frequencies, the binding of two frequencies. So, yes.
Think those polygons or whatever could have as many sides as you wanted. Is it particularly just the pentagon?
Yeah, just the pentagon and the hexagon.
And any stated reason for that or understanding?
Well, in geometry, then again, the pentagon has always been related to heaven. So we have one helix that's governed and basically balanced from heaven.
Is that why Chrysler went that way?
They like it.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm
Oh.
fine.
So, yes, another question.
Oliver Heaviside created four calculus equations that we refer to as Maxwell's equations.
Yes.
But Maxwell was working in quaternions to describe electromagnetism, and he had some equations that Oliver did not include in those four that talk about these longitudinal waves, which are different from the orthogonal electromagnetic waves that come off your TV antenna. I believe, that radionics is all longitudinal waves. That we have also healers that are working with hand energy that can produce this longitudinal wave, and it would be interesting to find out whether or not that's affected by the pyramid, by the hexagon and the pentagon. Can you have someone that's blessing someone increase their field by spinning a disc properly over their head or improperly reduce it?
Yeah, and you can measure that with a trimeter.
Can we measure?
can be measured. It's just like in temple space. So right now we've got a low. Have you got your?
It's here.
Well, here, come grab mine. You can. I bought my son when he reads about these things and knows what the good and bad frequencies are. I just get him and play with them. I don't even know what it says. But what we're finding. Thank you. So what we're finding as you create temple space, you can measure the increase in the magnetic field. Huh?
Speaker off.
Okay, so just, I want you all to take a moment to imagine that you're in the Great Pyramid and you're in the King's Chamber. Now, my theory on the King's Chamber was the first racquetball court on the planet. It's about the same size as a racquetball. The Egyptologists don't like that, but so anyway. But to give you an idea of the size, when I first started playing handball, I loved the resonance in the handball court. And then when I got over to the pyramid and in the King's Chamber, that's why I like to sing in the handball court, because the echoing and the resonance. So I want you to imagine that you're in a 1 to 2 chamber, and it's a granite chamber. And the reason why the Egyptians made that King's Chamber out of granite is a firestone. It's related to fire. And so the King's Chamber is a chamber of initiation. Tim and I are completing a book on the most complete examination of the metrology of the Great Pyramid. And we had a major breakthrough when we incorporated the lower chambers of the Great Pyramid into the grid, because nobody's ever taken in consideration that the descending chamber was part of the original design. It's like your architects, they know there was a basement. So when you integrate the entire design, then all of a sudden you get a lot of valuable information. So imagine that we're in the King's Chamber. It's a chamber of initiation. It's a chamber of fire. You've come through the Grand Gallery, which takes you through 28 digits of affirmations, where you're proclaiming your purity. So as we visualize in the Great Pyramid, in the King's Chamber, you'll start to feel a calmness about your body. Because the Great Pyramid is tuned to the frequency of the heart and the governing meridian, then that starts to bring those 3 meridians into a state of balance. You seeing a difference?
Right now it's hovering around 0.1, 0.2.
Okay. So then, if we affirm the following word, Tamira, 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 Tamira. What's going on now?
The peak quadrupled.
Yeah. Now, the Great Pyramid has a secret name hidden in it. In 1980, one of my gifts for persevering was I discovered a secret symbol hidden in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. A couple of people here have seen it. It's a big right triangle that was engraved in the cornerstone over in the northeast corner. The northeast corner is where all Masons put the cornerstone. So this right triangle, it took us 8 years before we could get the proper light to measure it. The right triangle is 50 inches by 100 inches. It's a 1 to 2 right triangle. So we started going, well, what's so important about a 1 to 2 right triangle? Well, the 1 to 2 right triangle is the fundamental triangle that starts to define Genesis. So in the beginning, everything starts out as a square, and then the square doubles. There's your double square, and that has a 26-degree angle and a 64-degree angle. And so as we began to study that, we realized we weren't just looking at one triangle. If I gave you a sanding block that was 3.5 inches and said, sand a shape of a right triangle, well, all of a sudden we looked at that and we said, my God, there's an interior triangle. And sure enough, the exterior triangle is based on the wavelengths of the sacred cubit, 25 inches. The next angle on the inside of that is based on the royal cubit. And we've laid this all out on the computer. These guys were 99.7% accurate. So then in sacred geometry, when you take a right triangle and you divide each angle by half, then that allows you to locate what they call the incenter of the right triangle, and there's another right triangle embedded there. And so that has then the wavelengths of the black cubit. Inside that are the wavelengths of the Riemann cubits. So the Egyptians placed a symbol on the cornerstone of the king's chamber that has the 4 major Egyptian cubits recorded, correct to the literally 3rd decimal point. And so what's interesting now is the sacred cubit resonates with hydrogen. The royal cubit resonates with oxygen. The black cubit resonates with carbon, and the Riemann cubit resonates with nitrogen. Embossed in the king's chamber in one symbol is the basically documentation of the vibrational wavelengths of the 4 organic elements on the periodic chart. So my question to Egyptologists, archaeologists, whoever, where did that information come from?
Yeah.
That's complete information, and it goes deeper than that, much deeper. We located, every temple in Egypt has what they call a witness stone. A witness stone is taken from a much older temple, because you take the vibration of the original temple and you want to introduce it to the new temple. And so we basically discovered that in the antechamber of the Great Pyramid, there's a stone called the granite portellus, or the Benben stone. And we find that that is the witness stone. And so there's a symbol on that stone, and Egyptologists, for the last 200 years, the symbol is a semicircle. And they've insisted that this semicircle on the surface of this Benben stone, it's about the size of a big suitcase, they said that that was used to put the, lower the stone in place. But then if you take accurate measurements of that, the base of that tau symbol is 8.33 inches. That's the wavelength of hydrogen. So then the seal is 1 inch off the surface. It's been embossed, so it's 1 inch, which is the pyramid inch, and so you have a second semicircle. Well, in mathematics, this is the inverse of this, 6.833 inches. That's the wavelength of oxygen. So on this stone, which is the witness stone in the Great Pyramid, and it's right in plain sight, is basically the formula for the water molecule. Who gave that to these people? It's pretty amazing. So what we're discovering is we have inherited a huge body of information that's been hidden in the pyramid, and it's just now coming to light. And I feel a lot of this has to do with how this conference started to perpetuate. The last time that Mary and Dean and I went to Egypt was in 1990. And last time I went to Egypt was in 1992. So we're thinking about a potential trip for next spring. And we're negotiating a contract with a filming company to do a documentary on the Great Pyramid. So if you're interested, we can give you our website. And yes.
I have a question that relates to something that is related here. I'm told that Masonic temples do not burn the north candle. They burn an east, a west, and a south candle, but in the Masonic temples proper, they don't light a north candle. What are your awarenesses of these 4 gates, northeast, south, and west, and how they regulate consciousness coming into the matrix?
Well, the Egyptians had a big thing for the north, because that's where the Big Dipper is. And they paid a lot of attention to the constellations that never go out of sight. traditionally then placing the cornerstone in the northeast corner appears to have begun way back in Egypt because it's a Masonic tradition. Traditionally, they'll place the cornerstone either in the outside of the building in the northeast corner or in a room somewhere in the northeast corner. But I don't know about like the lighting of candles, something I'm not familiar with.
That cornerstone may establish the geometry of the waves of the temple.
Well, what's interesting is the right triangle I'm talking about is on the cornerstone of the Great Pyramid. It's the largest granite block inside the King's Chamber. It's basically 94 inches by 122 inches. It's a big piece of rock, and there's a stone exactly the same size right behind it. And so the Egyptians used a 5 by 5 grid, which they applied to all of their artwork, all of their structures, and it allowed them to consistently lay out specific designs using specific angles in that grid. So we found a grid in one of the temples down in southern Egypt that is the same proportions as the cornerstone in the Great Pyramid, except it's an inch wider and an inch longer. So we thought, well, why is that? Well, the question was in quantum physics, and it deals with the fluttering of the hydrogen atom. So years ago, I think it was in 2010, here's a picture of DJ Nelson's Tesla coil pyramid. I'm going to pass this around. You can take a look at it. So back in 2010, Steve Hardy and I dowsed out the ley line grid system here in the backyard. And I've been doing this type of dowsing all over the planet, Egypt, down in South America, Central America. It's all the same. And what's interesting is we are living in a grid system that's 75 inches by 100 inches. All over the planet, 75 inches by 100 inches. It's exactly right on all the time. And the best tool I found to find this how many people have worked with the Cameron orometer?
Oh, yeah.
Ready with this one? This is the slickest dowsing rod I've ever worked with because it frees up this hand and you can manipulate the weight.
Nice.
And so this is what I use to find ley lines. And the way we work with this is you just simply, to pick up a north-south line, you just simply start moving along like this. And then all of a sudden the tip will rise. See how that tip rises? So then I put a mark down, then I come from the other side and you can find that ley line right on. So then the width of the ley line, this was discovered by Dr. Hartman, the width of the ley line is 8.33 inches. It's a hydrogen wave. And they recently discovered over in Libya, they discovered then that because of this grid system, it's taking aluminum, which is the most dominant metal in the planet, and the most dominant element in the planet, and it makes an isotope of aluminum. Isotope, I think it's isotope 26. And so that's how this electromagnetic wave field starts to program aluminum. So you get a constant waveform. Normally in weather like this, that waveform would be 8.33 inches, but when the barometric pressure starts to change, it can expand out to 25 inches, more compression. So this is the grid we're playing in. This is then how we transfer consciousness. So we all can give Gandalf credit for introducing to us the glia cell functions. Because prior to that conversation, I hadn't paid much attention to glia cells. I thought they were happy cells. And so that got me on a path to say, okay, well, what are these glia cell systems? So I'd highly recommend this reading. It's Geometric Universe by Roger Penrose. It's an accumulation of information put together by some of the top physicists in the world over the 90s. And totally blew my mind. They've got a chapter in there where they start talking about panspermia. They tell us, things come from outer space and come here and start to live. So the physicists had determined that the first single cell thing to show up on the planet was the mitochondria. That's the engines of your cell. The healthier you are, the more mitochondria you'll have. So first cell shows up, it's the mitochondria. Mitochondria are peace-loving little creatures. They don't attack stuff. Life was good. So then the physicists figured out that the second single-cell parasite that showed up on the planet was a parasite called Toxoplasmosis gondii. And it's aggressive. And when we had the COVID breakout, the computer artists took enlargements of the Toxoplasmosis gondii, and that gave them the spike protein that they started showing us. It's BS. But the single-cell Toxoplasmosis has these little protein spikes, and that's what rips the cell wall and allows that parasite to move into the cell. This is a microscopic parasite. 12 to 15 of these parasites can live inside a red blood cell. Boom. So the minute they break into the cell, guess what's for dinner? The mitochondria. So then all of a sudden, people that have this parasite, their whole world starts to change because now they're being governed by something else. They're not being governed by the mitochondria. So once the mitochondria sensed they were being attacked, the natural thing was to build a wall. That's where Trump got the idea. It's a survival mechanism. So then the mitochondria built the cell wall. Fast forward, then we started to get more complex creatures, and the cell wall became the cytoplasmic wall. It surrounds a seashell. So you walk on the beach, you see a seashell. That's basically a glial cell structure. So fast forward then, the glial cell network in the human body is resourced from the original shell that was developed by the mitochondria. So it's pretty interesting how this primitive nervous system, which showed up way before anything in the parasympathetic or sympathetic showed up. So when the glial cell system, that's your nervous system, part of your primal nervous system that's directly connected to the electromagnetic field of the Earth. The electromagnetic field of the Earth is connected to the cosmic grid, and all the top physicists in the world wrote that down in their papers. So here we are, reality check. We're able then to, like, for example, my wife Doreen is a very gifted psychic. We jokingly call her the the reluctant psychic. But when I first met her 34 years ago, I knew that she had the skill sets to read the grid and to go up into the cosmic realm and do readings. That's how we do it. Any questions on that? We all can do it. So, yeah, excellent read. They really went deep.
What was the name of that again, sir?
Pass that around too.
Geometric.
It's called Geometric Universe by Roger Penrose. He was considered like one of the top.
Say it into the mic.
I can hear it. So that's kind of been the journey. I'm finding that when we take this technology and let's see, I think it was in 2010 when I demonstrated the levitation effects of these rods. We don't have time to do that today, but when you take the cubit rods and post them around the tent, have a person here, and you've all seen that lift where you lift a person with 4 people. Sandra, Kay, and you guys were the last ones to do that. We about put my wife through the roof.
You did put me through the roof.
So what happens is In order to levitate, you need to reduce the carbon content in your body. How do you reduce the carbon content in your body? You increase the nitrogen content. The Egyptians understood this cycle between bad carbon, inert carbon. The bad carbon floats up to the atmosphere and it unites with nitrogen. The nitrogen then takes the bad carbon and produces good carbon, carbon-60, Buckminster Fuller carbon. And that's how that a green cycle works, and the Egyptians understood that. So I'm thinking that one of the ways that we might be able to reduce the carbon content in our atmosphere and on the planet is by using the Riemann cubit, which is the vibrational rate of nitrogen. So you just take a 14 5/8 inch cubit and you just start posting that cubit around your space and it'll start reducing the carbon content. About that. All right. So any questions? Yes.
Is your book gonna come out soon?
Oh, the book.
Which one?
Yeah.
Which one?
40 years ago, I said, I'm writing a book on Egypt. So when my son was 9 years old, I said, here, draw the picture for the back of the book. It was about 12 pages. We thought, boy, I got that done. We're up to about 1,800 pages, 7 volumes. We're finally doing a presentation to Inner Traditions, who published Schwaller de Lubitsch's work. And so we're pretty excited about that. So yeah, it'll be out. Yes.
Did they design anything that created peace, love, and harmony?
Well, the 3852 right triangle that I just showed you, that's the best example of establishing peace and harmony, because it puts your heart, governing, and central meridian in balance.
Does that also keep people out of war?
Well, war is another thing. Wars end up because we don't know how to communicate. Misuse of thought, word, and gesture is what creates wars. I can't say much else than that, because it is what it is. We've shattered our language, and we pretty much been destroying our language way before we even had artificial intelligence on computers. So that's the thing that I recognized back in the 70s is, I call it herd consciousness. And there seemed to be a lot of unconscious people on the planet at that time. That's why I was inspired to create the first, second, and third World Annual Healing Symposiums. And somebody pointed out the definition of a symposium is a drunken brawl. So, but it worked.
Humans speak many different languages. Okay, which language is the most powerful, and which one's the most destructive?
Well, all the languages have positive aspects, positive affirmations. And then all of the language also, our languages break down as we start to create new words, made up words, improper composition of words.
So, as we have bastardized our language with our, we change things around, we're changing the frequencies of what's happening around us by changing the language.
Yeah. I mean, you see that in the political spectrum. I'll probably burn a lot of people down on this, but if I was writing a book about biblical scripture, and I needed to pick out the character that would be the false prophet, Trump. I mean, false prophet, he's a lying MF. And if I had to pick out the other guy, it's Putin. Yeah, and they're here. And we were told they were going to be here. Last thing I'll say is Rocky McCullen, a good friend of mine, he came to Egypt with Dean. He and Dean drove out to New York the first trip. Rocky was a retired NASA scientist. So after our 1980 trip, I came out and visited Rocky, and we're sitting in his kitchen having a generic beer. That's the white beer can with beer on it. Rocky, can't you find something? So he's got his Texas Instrument computer out, and he says, have you ever seen degrees converted to radians? And I said, what are radians? Well, they're smaller increments of degrees. So he types in 667, or no, he typed in 36 degrees. And the 36 degrees converted to 367 radians. And I thought, oh my God, type in 38 degrees. When you convert 38 degrees, which is the angle of the heart to govern in the central meridian, when you type that in and convert it to radians, you get 666. The other day I'm driving down the street and I see this guy walking down the street with a t-shirt, and on the back it says 333, half evil. So why have we been told then that 666 is an evil number? Well, here comes the Catholic Church stepping into everything. And so the first thing you do is you have to take information that's powerful and you have to water it down. You have to make a fear part of the conversation. So all the triple-digit radian numbers, if you want to go into the Bible, Methuselah wasn't 900 and some odd years long. That's a encrypted number that will give you a key to what angle they're talking about. See, it's all encrypted. It's all hidden. Even some of the scriptures, like chapter 24 verse, there's a code in there about these numbers. So even though the bibliography has been greatly watered down, a few smart people back at the Nicene Council were still able to slip in some slick stuff. Yes?
This might be a little off, but what is the significance of the shape of the Pentagon building that the government?
Well, I had a girlfriend years ago. Her father was a colonel in the military back when they were building that. The Pentagon was originally going to be a hospital. Why? Makes sense. You build a hospital in the Pentagon shape, that's bringing in the energy from heaven. But somewhere along the line, there's, no, this would be a better place for the military to hang out. Yeah.
So what's happening there?
Well, that's where we plan wars. No. It's, again, it's part of the conversation we've developed in this planet that's just has such an opposite value from love, everything like that.
It's two pence because the interior courtyard has its own, so that's a double.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a powerful place, and so here you've got a military facility being bombarded by spiritual energy.
That's where the missile went in.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I've really enjoyed sharing. This has been a passion, and
Thank you, Tim.
yes.
Again.